Greetings to you. I'm Brother James Muhammad, a student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and your host for this week's segment of Closing the Gap broadcast. We want to welcome all of our viewing and listening audience, those of you who have been regular participants, and we hope that there are some that will be here for their first time. We welcome you once again to another segment of Closing the Gap broadcast. And for those of you who are regular, you know we always open up in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds. We thank Almighty God Allah for his merciful and prophetic intervention in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, and we thank him for raising up from our midst his messenger, Messiah, the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, through whom we have been given our beloved and blessed Redeemer. The man of whom we speak is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their names, my beloved brothers and sisters, all of you who have taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening, we greet you with the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
Of course, we want to welcome back our dear brother and sister who were missing in action, if you will, last week. And we're very happy to have them here once again. Our dear sister Stala Muhammad, the managing editor of the greatest paper that has ever been published by the greatest publisher, the Final Call newspaper, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Stala. Good to have you back.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother James. It is good to be back on Closing the Gap. Looking forward to this very important and critical show this evening. So as always, we want to encourage our viewing and listening audience not only to like and share this broadcast this evening, but brothers and sisters, make sure if there are any questions that you have this evening that you kindly place your questions in the chat. And with that, I will pass it to Student Minister Chad for his greetings to our fabulous audience.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Starla. Assalamu alaikum, family, and those that are tuning and listening in. We most definitely appreciate you, as Sister Starla said, for taking out your time, the busy schedule of your day, and being here with us. And we ask that you, just continue as far as to tune in to Closing the Gap. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you also do that also to our YouTube channel. All right. It's a blessing. I look forward to the show. Family, pardon me as I have to leave at 8 o'clock, but up into that time, I'm looking forward to it. And God willing, I'll be still tuning in.
And we are thankful to Allah for the time that you can allot to us, dear brother. So let us begin. As members of the Nation of Islam, under the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and of course, his divine instruction, we have what is referred to as our official organ, which is called the Final Call newspaper. On the back page of the Final Call newspaper, we have printed what we call and what we refer to and what we hold as our Constitution. Point 3 of which of what the Muslims want is, or rather point 2 rather, we want justice, equal justice under the law. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed, class, or color. Point number 5 of what the Muslims want reads, we want freedom for all believers of Islam now held in federal prisons. We want freedom for all Black men and women now under death sentence in innumerable prisons in the North as well as the South. Our dear brothers and sisters, from the time that our fathers have set the soles of their feet in the Western Hemisphere, our cry has been for freedom, justice, and equality. And unfortunately, the Black community is not lacking in incidences of injustice imposed upon us by the broader society, the society of those who have proven to be our enemies. Tonight, we are hosting our dear sister, Marsha McIntryre-Lowe, beloved mother, beloved sister. And this is a story of yet another case of injustice inflicted on one of our brothers, particularly her son, Brother Cameron. We're going to let her tell her story in full. Our goal, our objective is to get this incident of injustice out to the public and to garner as much support with an outcry for justice that will ultimately lead to justice being given to our dear brother Cameron McIntryre. And so we are blessed tonight to host our dear sister Marsha McIntryre-Lowe. I want to read her bio just to get a little familiar with our dear sister. Our dear sister Marsha McIntryre-Lowe, a proud native of Jacksonville, Florida, was born Marsha McIntryre and raised on Ken Knight Drive in Sherwood Forest, embarked on her journey of motherhood at the tender age of 17. Known to many as Ma Dukes, she has been a devoted mama bear, if you will, to her 4 boys ever since. Affectionately recognized by numerous young people, Marsha has dedicated a significant part of her life to nurturing and empowering youth. With a passion for instilling a sense of value and self-worth, she has tirelessly worked to guide young minds, allowing them to explore their talents and broaden their horizons beyond the confines of Duval County. Marsha's commitment extends to providing unique experiences through trips, imparting valuable lessons on comportment in diverse settings. Several years ago, Marsha took a significant step by founding an organization called Esther's House, a vision initially conceived by her godmother, Zelma Dickinson. Esther's House focuses on addressing the needs of at-risk girls in the community, offering a range of classes such as etiquette, financial literacy, cooking, hygiene, and more. The goal is to empower these young girls to become productive and confident members of society. In 2023, our dear sister Marsha faced a personal tragedy when her son became a victim of gun violence, sustaining 10 gunshot wounds. This experience prompted her to expand Esther's House to include support for parents with children who are victims of gun violence and survived. Recognizing a gap in existing support systems, Marsha has become a pillar of strength for these families, offering the much needed support and understanding. Her unwavering dedication reflects a profound commitment to building a community that stands together in times of adversity. Marsha's resilience and advocacy exemplify the message she imparts to at-risk teens in local schools. Quote, "If I can, so can you." Her life's work and the establishment of Esther's House serve as a testament to her enduring impact on the lives of those whom she touches. Our dear sister, Marsha, welcome to Closing the Gap broadcast. Once again, we greet you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to you all.
Good evening, sis.
Praise be to
Good
Allah.
evening, ma'am.
We're going to get right back to you so that you can have your opening statement. We also are blessed to have on our show, I don't see, oh, there he is, our dear brother Rashad Shabazz. I want to read his bio. Brother Rashad Ishmael Shabazz is a notable figure who has transformed his life through perseverance and dedication. A registered student and member of the Lost Foundation of Islam in the West, under the esteemed leadership of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Rashad currently serves as the secretary and paralegal for the Nation of Islam's 7th Region Prison Reform Ministry under National Student Prison Reform Minister Abdullah Muhammad and the 7th Region Prison Reform Ministry Coordinator, Brother Zachariah Muhammad. His journey is marked by significant personal transformation. Formerly incarcerated in the Florida Department of, Corrections, and I say that advisedly, corrections. Rashad spent over 26 years in prison before his release in 2021. This experience, however, did not define him. Instead, it fueled his determination to contribute positively to society. Upon his release, Rashad embarked on an entrepreneurial path, founding Shabazz Labs, that's an acronym, LABS LLC, which stands for Life, Art, Business, Social. This halal holding company is a testament to his vision and commitment to ethical business practices. Currently, he is at the forefront of developing America's first 5-star halal resort, the RS19 Rest and Restoration Relaxation Resort, showcasing his innovative spirit. Rashad's academic achievements are equally impressive. He graduated with honors in the field of law, a remarkable feat that led to his induction into the International Honor Society, Delta Epsilon Tau. His story is one of resilience, transformation, and unwavering dedication to his community and faith. Welcome to Closing the Gap broadcast, dear brother Rashad. Wonderful to have you. And once again, assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam, sir.
And of course, we'll get back to you for any opening remarks you'd like to make. We appreciate your brevity, but we definitely want to hear from you, especially in matters that are legal.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. I want to turn the show over now to our esteemed co-hosts, our dear sister, Starla Muhammad. We have Brother Zachariah, too. Brother Zachariah, I didn't mean to skip over you. I'm so sorry. I don't have your bio, but everyone knows you to be the Student Regional Prison Reform Minister, who all of us that are trying to give some support to our brothers and sisters who are locked down in what is referred to as the belly of the beast are under your leadership, and an esteemed leadership it is. We have our dear brother, a fellow student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and once again, Student Regional Prison Reform Minister of the 7th Region of the Nation of Islam, Student Minister Zachariah Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And of course, this is not your first time. And forgive me for speeding ahead. I'm just excited. But
I thought you had my bio from last visit, Brother Jay.
I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, sir.
And the truth of the matter is, you're so well known, dear brother. I don't think it's necessary. But of course,
that's right.
The same respect and consideration that we give all of our guests.
Yes,
so
sir.
All praises due to Allah. And you'll have a chance to talk somewhat about your journey in Islam, as well as the prison system. And you know what? I just realized, Brother Chad, we're all products of that system.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's true.
Isn't that something? It seems an unescapable reality for young Black men growing up.
Mm-hmm. That's true, brother.
But Allah is the best knower, and Allah has benefited us, all of us, who have gone through that system.
Yeah.
So, my dear sister Stala Muhammad, I want to turn it over to you once again, the managing editor of the Final Call newspaper and co-host for Closing the Gap broadcast, Sister Stala Muhammad. Go right ahead, sis.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, thank you again for tuning in this evening. And just again, for those who may be just now joining us, please place any questions that you may have for our guests in the chat, and we will get through as many of them as we can this evening. But first and foremost, for those who may not be familiar with the journey, the trial that our sister Marsha is currently embroiled in with her dear son, her beloved son, Brother Cameron, I would like to definitely yield before we begin, maybe taking questions, but yield a few minutes to our dear sister, Sister Marsha. If you can please share, Sister Marsha, with the Closing the Gap viewing and listening audience, what you and your son Cameron have been enduring for those who are not familiar with what is happening, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to speak. I get excited when I'm talking about Cameron because he is an awesome young man. So I get excited to tell people about him. We started this struggle roughly almost 6 years ago. Wrong place, wrong time type situation. My son was a 19-year-old college student when he was arrested. He was incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. And so during that process, he was housed at the Duval County Jail. At the time, the Duval County Jail had an outbreak of tuberculosis. We did not know anything about it. They kept that under wraps. And in that process, my son contracted TB. He called home several times complaining of not feeling well and that they had given him a shot in his arm. The shot, we kind of thought, because that was kind of during the COVID time, we thought it was a vaccination for COVID, and it was not. It was a TB test. Well, if anybody knows, TB testing is designed, once it's given, it's designed to react. And it did. It reacted. It broke his arm out. And I constantly called, and he got no medical attention. I got a call from one of the inmates stating that Cameron had collapsed. So I immediately got down to the jail, and I'm standing out there, and I'm calling on the jail phone to anybody that would listen. And finally, someone came out and said, they told me they were going to make sure he was okay. Well, at that time, all they did was give him Tylenol. They didn't treat him. They didn't give him any medication, just Tylenol. Once he was sentenced, he was then moved to Lake Butler, which is a receiving kind of prison. You kind of go there, do all of your medical checks, and then you go off to your, normal prison or your home prison. Even at Lake Butler, during the whole medical process, they never treated it. Once he got to his main prison, which is Wakulla, I started noticing I was going every weekend, every Saturday, every Sunday. Once we started noticing his health kind of declining, he was still complaining about headaches, stomach aches, and we saw his health declining. He went from 180 pounds to 98 pounds in a very short period of time. My sister, my mom, we're all calling the prison almost on a daily basis. I called 236 times. to try to get some type of assistance. Once we realized that the prison wasn't going to do anything, we start requesting that he be moved to a hospital, and they refused to do so. He then found a lump in his testicle. So I called the prison and I told them something is wrong. Now he has a lump. They called me back and told me my son had an STD. By then he had been there roughly almost 5 years. So of course I'm like, a STD. So then he calls home and he's in tears, and he proceeds to tell me, they're not telling the truth. They're lying. He's not gay. He's never been with inmate. Nobody bothers him. And that's what they wanted me to believe, that my son was, had contracted an STD. We then went to one of the visits, and my son was so frail and so sick that they literally had to push him out in a wheelchair. And so at that point, it was one of the inmates that had been housed at Duval County with him began to cry when they saw my son. That's how bad he looked. No one would help. I talked to all of the lieutenants. I talked to everyone, and they kept saying it's out of our hands. Then I got a call one night from a lieutenant, and he asked me if it was okay for him to call me on his personal cell, and I told him yes. He called me on his cell phone on his break and said, if you don't get your son some help, he's going to die. That night I prayed. I cried out to God because I didn't know what else to do. I had called my state representatives. I had called Congress. I had done everything I knew to do. And God told me to put it on social media. And that's what I did. The next morning, I posted a long post on social media crying out for help, asking anyone that will call the prison to call. And I gave them the number, and people started calling. They started calling. And because they got such a response, they decided to rush my son to the hospital. Unfortunately, by then it was too late. The TB had taken over his body. It was in his spine, his lungs, in his brain. It was everywhere. Once they got him there, they started trying. Well, let's back up. They had taken him there before that time because they wanted to remove his testicle. And at that time, the guard stopped him and they said, you cannot do that without his family's permission. You can't just castrate him without his family's permission. So they took him back to the prison because the guard would not let the doctor do that. Once they sent him back to the hospital, I got a call from the doctor saying that they wanted to castrate him because he had cancer, and that's what the lump was. I refused. I told them, no, he does not have cancer. My son, no, that's not what that is. And they told me basically I didn't have a choice in the matter because he came in there at a property of the state, is what they said. So I didn't have a choice whether or not they did it. The doctor, which was strange to me, called me later that night from his personal cell phone. I still have it in my phone, trying to make me feel better about the process. And, he might still be able to have kids one day. It's not that big of a deal, all of those things. At the time, I was in Jacksonville in ICU with my other son who had been shot 10 times. And so I was literally going from one ICU to another, back and forth, 3 hours away. So once my son was released on December 16th, 2022, back to the prison, they gave them a very strict regimen to follow to treat his TB. They did not do that. They did not try to give him his medication until December 31st. But when they went in there to administer his medication, they found him unresponsive. So they had to rush him back to the hospital, and he was on life support at that time. They called and said that he was unresponsive. He was just kind of there, kind of just staring in space. He wouldn't respond to anyone. And so when my family and I got there, he just stared. And I looked over at him and I said, Cameron, do you know who this is? And he looked up and he said, my mommy. And that just, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm a mother of 4 boys. So that was very difficult to see him in that state. After that, the doctor here in Jacksonville heard about my son's case. He found out that I was traveling back and forth to see both of my sons in ICU. And so he requested that Cameron be moved to Jacksonville under their TB program. And the prison agreed to move him to Jacksonville. And he was literally in the same hospital as my youngest son. As a matter of fact, they were right across the hall from each other. While that was very good, it was very difficult because he was still an inmate. So I still couldn't go over and see him. I had to stand in the doorway of my other son's room and look across the hall at Cameron's room as a mother and couldn't go check on my son because he's an inmate. I had to get permission from the warden just for a visit to go in the room and see about my child. I stood in the hallway and I could hear nurses talking about him that had no clue that that was my son. So that was a very difficult for me, but he was there for 8 months. They got his weight back up. They had started giving him double portions of meals. They had him on a feeding tube. Well, once they got him kind of stabilized, they released him back to the prison system where he is now. Now he is there and he called and said, Mommy, my brain hurts. He talks like that because now he is that of like a 10-year-old. So because of the lesions and the trauma to the brain, he's basically that of a 10-year-old. So he called one day and said, Mommy, my brain hurts. And so I immediately, as I always do, started calling the prison. And they told me, well, we're doing round-the-clock neural checks every 6 hours. And I said, well, what does that entail? And they said, well, we look in his eyes and we do all of that. And I said, you can't see brain function by doing that. There's something wrong. They told me they could get him to a CAT scan, but it was going to be 7 days away. I said, my son can't wait 7 days to get a CAT scan. So at that time, I reached out to one of my state representatives, and she got involved. She was able to get him a CAT scan immediately. And the CAT scan showed that he had so many lesions on his brain, they couldn't even count them. He had now also developed a mass that is growing. He had already had a stroke during the process, so he's paralyzed on his right side. He has feet swelling because, of course, they weren't turning him properly, so he had bed sores. He's gone through a lot. The doctors finally decided that Cameron had so many injuries that they could not treat him, that it was best that they started the paperwork for a medical compassionate release. So we did that process. I got calls from the prison. I got calls from investigators asking me if I had a wheelchair ramp, I needed a hospital bed, I needed all of these things. And I got really prepared for my son to come home. I went shopping for him. I did all of these things only to get on the call with the commission board. And they gave us 10 minutes for my family to speak. It took them 10 seconds to deny him. 10 seconds. They gave no thought about it, as if they had already had it planned. They were going to deny him. And they did. So now we're at the point where I am trying to get out there so that we can get him home so that he can get the proper medical attention. If the prison hospital is saying we can't do anything for him, then we need to get him home so I can get him the proper medical attention that he needs. Yes.
Wow. We thank you, dear sister, for
Thank you,
sharing.
Sister Marsha.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We thank you for sharing and being transparent, dear sister. And you know, as you was talking, it's one of those stories that it'll be rare for someone to say that I can relate to what you're going through. You know, first thing come to my mind with everything that you experience is just to ask you, you know, in sincerity, you know, how you're doing, how you're holding up with everything that's going on mentally, physically, and spiritually. Are you taking care of yourself and making sure that during these tough times that you still putting in self-care and, you know, to help to keep your sanity, dear sister?
It's very difficult.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
very difficult. Again, I have 4 boys. Well, they're not boys, they're grown men, who has each individually been in some way or another traumatized by the system, you know, to say the least. So I am the mama bear. So I have, for the past 6 years, been fighting in some way or another for all of my boys. I don't know why the attack is so great. I am a woman of faith, and I'm always reminded of the story of Job, you know, and that's what keeps me going. And that's what keeps me close to God, because I really believe that he will let the devil touch me or even my children, but he can't kill us. And so I pray, and that's how I keep going, and that's how I stay sane. I pray.
Right, right. Thank you, sister. Well, you have praying brothers and sisters here with you, dear sister. So we'll continue to pray also.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
But I seem to be
Brothers and
getting
sisters,
Brother Zachariah, it's from your line. That's why I muted you, Brother Zachariah, if you can. Just open it up when you talk.
I'm on mute, Brother Chad.
So we
I
can,
hear that background noise as well, but I would go back on mute.
Yeah, it came off. And once it came off, it started again, Brother Zachariah.
well, let's continue. I mean, we've been
Okay.
bearing up under it thus far.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know.
I would like to, if we can, go to our dear brother Rashad as well, before he has to leave the program. Assalamu alaikum once again, brother Rashad.
Walaikum salam, ma'am.
And brother, when student minister James was reading your bio, I think the thing that really struck me is really your strength and resolve to have spent so much time behind bars, but when you get out, you know, to hit the ground running. Sometimes we see and hear some of the statistics when it comes to recidivism, and brothers and sisters, once they come out, sometimes, you know, they've got trials, they've got struggles, and they end up back in prison. So can you share a little bit about your journey, and then what is it about your faith, your resolve, your strength that you endured that time behind bars, but when you got out, you know, you've been a service to the community and to your people. Can you share your journey with us?
Absolutely, dear sister. First and foremost, I would like to say assalamu alaikum to you all.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
And that I
Walaikum
bear
salam.
witness to no God except Allah, who has appeared to us in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is his exalted Christ and the messenger to us all. The only thing that I can say about my journey in the Florida Department of Corrections, and your observation of it, is that you see the end result, but it wasn't an easy task. I never allowed myself to become an inmate. I never allowed myself to get into the convict mentality. I only was what I am, a Muslim. And because of that, I was able to live all those years and days and months in Florida Department of Corrections and be a witness of what has happened to our dear sister's son, to other men, and record those things into my heart and just offer it up to Allah for help and justice, because I was helpless physically to do anything about it. But I did determine in my mind while I was in there that when I was released from prison, that I would come back through the front gate as a part of the Nation of Islam's prison reform ministry to help those men and women who are in there to navigate the darkness of the Florida Department of Corrections prison system, which is the third largest prison system in the country behind Texas and California. The Florida Department of Corrections has over 140 prisons. Listen to that number. Over 140 prisons in the Florida Department of Corrections. Even though Texas and California have more inmates in their prison system, we have over 100 more prisons than each of those states combined together.
Wow.
And that astronomical number of prisons means to us that the state of Florida has made a determined agenda to not only study incarceration, but to master that type of slavery in this day and time. And the mastery of corrections, or how can I say, imprisonment, entails suffering and pain and torture of inmates. That's a part of the beast. Mental torture, physical torture, the pain of being disassociated from your God and your family and your community, being cut off from all communications. While I was incarcerated, my story briefly is that in 2017, I suffered a massive heart attack while I was in prison in Miami. And coming back from the hospital after having had open heart surgery as an inmate in the Florida Department of Corrections, I was subject to something very similar to what Sister Marsha's son was suffering right now at the very same prison, Lake Butler. And this is what they call the Florida Department of Corrections State Hospital. If you go to the outside hospital and you have a surgery, they would usually send you to Lake Butler's hospital when you return to the prison system, and they have doctors and nurses at that hospital that are supposed to care for you and nurture you back into health. Fortunately for myself, and I would like everybody to understand this, that even though the enemy has a plan, God has a plan also that overcomes the enemy's plan. When I returned to the prison system, the agenda was to kill me, was to allow me to die as an inmate and never allow me to see the other side of the fence again because of who I stand with and what I know and what I believe. However, peppered throughout that prison, there were Muslim doctors and Muslim nurses who took an empathetic heart to my situation and my plight. And outside of the normal protocol, they administered care and health to me that nurtured me back to the condition that I am right now. Wow. I've had 4 heart attacks since 2017, 1 open heart surgery that required a double bypass, and then I had a down graft a few years later that required 2 stents to be inserted into my heart. And if it wasn't for those men and women who were benevolent within the Florida Department of Corrections at that level of care, I would probably not be here today to assist our dear sister in her plight. But I would like Sister Marsha to know that God is a part of our DNA. He is not just someone that we worship across the universe, but a part of our very genetic makeup is Almighty God, Allah himself, and he is ever present. So no matter what the enemy would try to do to us physically or mentally, his presence in our physical person and in our spiritual self allows us to come out of these conditions that seem insurmountable. However, there's a part that we all must play in this process. And so we're suing for justice on behalf of Brother Cameron. We're suing to the public. We're suing to the courts. We're appealing to the community at large to become aware of this situation with this young man who has been castrated, who has been poisoned by the enemy, poisoned so much that there's so many lesions on his brain that they can't be counted. Imagine that type of injury that was generated on purpose. We don't believe in coincidence and mistakes in these matters. This was done on purpose. This young man, for those of you who didn't know, he had 3 scholarships to go to college: an academic scholarship, a music scholarship, and a sports scholarship. That type of genius coming from a young Black man here in America gathers the attention of the COINTELPRO operatives, the counterintelligence program, whose sole purpose for existence is to monitor Black and brown America for young men and women who show signs of leadership independent of what they design themselves. And when they see this independent Black and brown leadership emerge, they immediately begin to send operatives at these young men and women to try to curb their interests or take over or take control of their agenda and make them not go where they were destined to go. And so, dear Sister Marsha, your son, you are one of those mothers. You are one of those mothers that we've heard about and seen on TV for the past 100 years or better here in America, who has to watch her son suffer at the hands of the enemy. But know that Allah is here with us. He's blessed us. He's protecting us. If no one comes to our aid among men, he has weapons of mass destructions that the enemy can't defend themselves against.
That's right.
And so when we talk about diplomatic language, we're at the point right now where the gloves have come off. You know, our diplomacy, we've given them diplomacy for hundreds of years here in America. Now it's time to fight. And fight we will. We'll stand with you and your family, dear sister.
That's right.
Praise be to Allah. So, Sister Starla, you know, just to answer your question, that is a brief history of my journey in the Florida Department of Corrections. I've seen and witnessed so much like this that I've recorded to come out here and present to the public at some point or another.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Brother Rashad, for sharing your testimony. Brother Chad?
Yes, ma'am. Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that transparency. It's beautiful. Dear Sister Marsha and Brother Rashad, you can also chime in on this. I just wanted to ask, like, how has the community and you know, social media and the grassroots organizations help in this fight for justice so far? And also, you know, how can we help better to assist you?
So, as I stated before, when I posted it on social media, it helped. That is what got my son to a hospital. Again, had they not stepped in and done what they did, he probably would have been dead in that prison. So they supported me, and I posted again not too long ago because I was trying to, again, once they denied him, get some help. And we were trying to reach out to Ben Crump, and we were trying to reach out social media. Again, they stepped in and they started kind of tagging people and tagging different lawyers and tagging. That is how I got in touch with the state representative that I got in touch with, because someone else tagged her and she ended up responding on social media. So they've given me a lot of support.
Okay, thank you.
And I still need that. So you asked, how could you guys help?
Yes,
I still need the support. I need the platforms such as this to be able to get the word out to everyone about my son's condition. Again, our governor is running for a presidency right now.
Yes.
And so I need this to get out there right now. This is not something that, you know, he needs. And again, he might not know anything about this situation. And so just getting word to him, as well as our current president is also running for presidency. So I just feel like if it gets to the right platform, someone is going to have to do something to assist my son. His health, again, is not getting better. He's very scared. He has watched people around him die the past week. 2 inmates, you know, just where he is. I was on the phone with him I went to see him Friday, and someone coded while my mom and I were visiting him, and we watched the medical team had no sense of urgency to assist the man. And so I was on the phone with him 2 days later, and someone else coded, and he asked me if we could stop and pray. And we did. We stopped and prayed. And he said to me, "Mommy, I'm scared that one day that might be me." And so I just, again, I have a sense of urgency now because of things like that.
Wow. Yes, man. Thank you, sis.
Brother Chad, may I say something, please?
Yes, sir. Please.
When I was at that hospital, Lake Butler, where her son was at, is at, I was in the hospital there for about 45 days. And, you know, we as Muslim followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and helpers of Minister Farrakhan, we're taught to be mathematically precise and accurate when we speak. In those 45 days of my presence at that hospital, without exaggerating, I believe I counted 37 bodies within 45 days. People just timed out. You know, I don't know why they died or how they died, but I had to go downstairs at the bottom of the hospital on a daily basis to meet with the medical staff about my heart condition, and where I would sit at in the hallways and wait for my turn to go in and speak with the doctor, who was a Muslim, by the way, from Syria. The bodies of the people who had passed away overnight, they would have them wrapped on gurneys in the room next to me. And I would always go in there, I would check, and I would look in there. And of the 45 days, about 30 of those days, I saw either a body or multiple bodies for people who passed away at that hospital. So, you know, the fear of a young man who hasn't really experienced life of death is real. And I pray for your son's mind that he doesn't allow this fear to overcome him too much, and that we bring him home. But this being a political arena as well, and this being an election year, these are topics that need to be put to the governor's desk and the president's desk immediately. If we can't get to those desks immediately, then, excuse me for that, I apologize. If you can't get this to their desk, you can get to the representatives, you can get to the state senators or the U.S. senators, someone who has his or her ear. Sister Kamala Harris, she needs to be brought in on this. If you're in that office, you know, you have a responsibility to every human that is in America, not just those who are in society. And when the government does these things to people who are incarcerated, there's a shifting of blame that takes place. Originally, they tried to shift this brother's condition and blame on himself by saying that he had an STD, and then they tried to say, oh, it was a cancer, that it wasn't something that they administered to him that caused this condition. They were looking at this fiscally. They were looking at the economic bottom line of this in the future down the line, rather than this young man being helped and healed. So while they were playing games going back and forth about this misdiagnosis of an STD and cancer and cutting body parts off of this young man, his condition was getting worse and worse and worse until he is at the point where he is right now. And I must say that it was, Sister Marsha, it made my life to hear his voice tonight. When he called you on the phone and you allowed us to hear his voice, it took all my power to keep the tears from falling from my eyes, to hear life in his body, intelligence, alertness. It was a beautiful sound, the most beautiful sound that I probably have heard in years. And tell this young brother that we love him, and that we thank you, and that we receive both of you among this family, and we're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Praise is due to Allah. Yes, we are all of that sentiment, Brother Rashad. Wonderful to hear his strength, and the strength of his spirit. You know, dear brother, I would like, if you could, prioritize and list some of the steps that we need to take, and what objective, as far as a priority, do we need to pursue at this point, being from the legal aspect of this whole event?
Well, legally speaking, this process begins in two ways. You have what they call the Prison Litigation Reform Act, the PLRA, which allows an inmate to sue the Department of Corrections for an injury done to him civilly or physically. This process begins with the inmate, his or herself, starting with writing a grievance, a physical grievance to the person who did the injury. And then you follow that up, if that grievance gets denied, with a formal grievance to the warden of the prison. You bring the warden's attention to the facts of the issue and see if the warden and his or her staff can bring a regress to these grievances. If that doesn't happen, then you file an appeal to the Florida Department of Corrections secretary in Tallahassee. And you bring the issue and the facts to the secretary's desk. And once that takes place and the secretary finds or rules that, based upon his or her study of the evidence and facts presented, that the department is not responsible, this is when you are freed from your obligation up under the Prison Litigation Act, and you can take the issue to the courts. However, if your son has the mental capacity of a 10-year-old and he's unable to follow through with his grievance process himself, then you, as the mother or family member, then you can carry this issue to the courts yourself on behalf of your son. In the first District Court of Appeal, you can bring this issue to them through a mandamus to force a government to do their job, or you can sue them through litigation, and then you can be compensated financially, you and your family, or you can be compensated financially and or have your son released to your care for medical care. But the process begins with either him initiating that initial grievance or you appealing to the court saying that your son doesn't have the mental ability to follow through with the grievance process, and you are seeking permission to do this on your own in what we call due process, following through with due process.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
As you all know, this, of course, is an interactive broadcast where we entertain the engagement of our viewing and listening audience. We do have a question posted by our dear brother, Tony Muhammad. If we could post that question for all of our guests to see and to respond to.
And I'll go ahead and read our brother's question. He says, Assalamu alaikum and greetings. According to the American Academy of Family Physicians, quote, inmates in correctional facilities have significantly higher rates of disease than the general population, and correctional facilities are often an ill-equipped provider for the medically underserved, end quote. Can you speak to how Cameron's health condition is common in U.S. prisons, and what is presently being worked on to address these circumstances? Sister Marsha, we'll start with you.
So obviously I didn't have a lot of information or even knowledge about this until it happened to my son. I didn't find out. One of the nurses at the hospital where my baby boy was, she called me right before I went on with the commission to try to get medical release for Cameron. And she's the one that kind of gave me the insight and basically told me that the prison system, jail system is the number one place that, like he said, that diseases and TB. So the fact that all of these things, he had every symptom of TB. So the fact that they were going back and forth about, is it cancer? Is it this? Is it that? She was telling me that that was the first thing that they should have checked him for, because it is so rampant in the prison system. So again, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about anything like that until, she gave me some education on it.
Okay, to our dear brother Rashad, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you.
Yes. Remember that the prisons and themselves are a microcosm of the larger society. And whenever you have a small environment of human beings together like that, diseases quickly spread. If one inmate catches the flu, you would be surprised how quickly that disease will spread across the compound among the other inmates. because of the close proximity that they are to each other, the ventilation system, and the inadequate healthcare providers that are at each prison. So whenever we have these incidences of tuberculosis, or even when the COVID virus was out and running, the prisons were affected greatly. They were affected so bad at one point that they were considering mass releases of inmates during the COVID lockdown because they could not care for them. They couldn't provide for them, which is one of the provisions when you get this, what they call a mercy release or medical release. If the department cannot provide adequate health care for an inmate, then they can release the inmate to the family for them to find that healthcare provider for that inmate. In this case, the Florida Department of Corrections have admitted that they cannot do anything for Brother Cameron. They can't do anything but feed him and keep his heart beating and keep him alive until his release date. That's not good enough for us. We don't want you to just keep him alive. We want you to let him come home to his family so that we can get our doctors to take a look at him and provide our medical care, our medical and medication and medical care to him to bring him out of the condition that you have put him in. This is what we're looking for, and this is how the Florida Department of Corrections specifically, whenever there's a disease in a prison, it spreads quickly.
Thank you, dear brother.
If I could just say something as well, just to what Brother Rashad said, we went through all of those processes, and when it got to the Department of Corrections, I got a call from their nurse or their representative for the medical portion of it, and she proceeded to tell me the type of TB that Cameron had. I should just be glad he's still alive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just disrespectful. Now, I know, Brother Zachariah, it's a beautiful thing, having our dear brother on here. And like yourself, Brother Rashad and Brother Zachariah, and as Brother James mentioned earlier, we are also those that have been in the belly of the beast. Not as long as y'all. So in that belly, y'all will be like the large intestine, we're the small intestine. We ain't been in there that long. But Brother Zachariah, one of the things I wanted to mention was you have the connection with our national prison reform minister, Brother Abdullah. With cases like this that's going on with our dear sister, have you gotten a chance to talk to him about it or share any info on what's going on with our dear sister and our son Cameron in the prison? And if so, any feedback, or if not, are you planning on talking to him about it?
Yes, sir. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is true and living exalted Christ. And I continue to bear witness that the Honorable Minister Lord Farrakhan is the Messiah in our midst. I greet all of you in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
salam, sir.
That's a very beautiful question, Brother Chad. And it's been so much going on with this wicked situation. I have been speaking with our brother national student reform minister, Abdullah, up to 2 weeks now about this. And as I become before you and the media, I have struggled with my anger and emotion. And yes, to answer your question, since November 17th, we did send a report up to Brother Student National, Abdullah, attention concerning our sister, Marsha. And we gave him what was given to us. We also formatted it and our plan of action and our bullet points. And after he has reviewed that, his information, his instruction to me, it has been well put together and followed through with the format and the bullet points that has been put together. And he's watching every step of this here. And also, I will humbly like to say, this is also before Minister Farrakhan's death as well.
Praise be to Allah.
I have to say that. But however, I even contact our student regional minister of Mosque number 29, Brother Patrick Muhammad. And I shared with him how I felt, because I really have a diplomatic team who have orator skills. At times I do present that, but at a time like this, I do not choose to present that. We talk straight talk, because crises such as these still exist in a systematic way. The reward go to the researcher. And these people have a history of this here. They have castrated us before. They have even cut the breasts off our sisters and used them as tobacco pouches. So this guy, this beast, his sin is like a bottomless pit. And after I explained to our beloved national the plan of actions that we're going through, which is being formulated there in her own city, Jacksonville. We are getting with the clergies, our student minister, Nolan there in Jacksonville, with our prison reform rep there, Brother Michael Foex. And we're waiting on that information there to go forward when we will meet to proceed on, brothers and sisters who are listening. I have been informed this has declared war, and we must fight for human rights. And when I hear something like this, and you hear something like this, and our community hear stuff like this, we all come together at our sister's side, and we will fight. Yes, we going to Jacksonville.
Come on.
We going to Jacksonville. We going to the town hall meeting there. We going to Tallahassee. We going outside of Lake Butler facility. Even with the approval of her, we have spoke with her. We even going inside to see our nephew, her son, our brother.
Right.
We have formatted all this here. And I speak with Sister Marsha on a daily basis to remind her, my word to her, I will be by your side every step of the way. So help me God. So we do have a format before us, and the world will see how we move, and we will secure our sister the way we would secure the Messiah in our midst, Minister Farrakhan. Yes, he is aware of this here, and he told us to go through with this format and said to me, if we're not strong enough to represent the National Prison Reform Minister, who he also represent Minister Farrakhan, and then mischief began to come through the door. Yes, he's aware of it. Thank you for that question.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Brother Zachariah. At this time, family, I have to dismiss myself, but may Allah continue to bless you all and Sister Marsha, most definitely going to keep you and your family in prayer.
Absolutely.
Brother Rashad, you know, we got y'all back. Brother Zachariah, we got y'all back. Anything that we can do to help. All right?
Yes.
Praise
And Brother Chad,
Mhm.
there's much because our sister,
Mhm.
she been on her feet.
Yes,
I
yes.
have been communicating. It's some
Mhm.
stuff that she really haven't said. How
Mhm.
they even treated her in the courtrooms, brother.
Mhm.
After she done spent her money,
Mhm.
she fell out because
Mhm.
they had gave her a promising sentence,
Mhm.
and go before this wickedness and
Yes.
sentence this brother to something other than what was agreed upon, and she falls out. And Hagar, the representative who she have gave the money to, told her, "Oh, stop it, Marsha. Get up from there." What, brother? You see what's going on?
Right, right, right.
And I have served 20 years straight through, and I know this beast. And like the minister say, we have to show him up. We have to. So help me, God.
Mm-hmm. Praise be to God. Thank you, Brother Zachariah. Wow. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Brother Chad, for the time that you shared with us there, brother.
Thank you.
May Allah bless you tomorrow in the delivery of your magnificent message. We anticipate that it will be great by Allah's grace and permission.
Inshallah. Thank you. Praise be to God. Walaikum
You know, Sister Marsha, Brother Rashad, Brother Zachariah, you know, when people hear about the conditions, particularly in state prisons in the United States, a lot of times the states that immediately come to mind are maybe Mississippi or Alabama. But you all have shared some disturbing information with regard to the state prisons in Florida. You know, Florida is often presented as, you know, the Sunshine State and, you know, Disney World, and it's a vacation spot. But the conditions of these state prisons, I think, really needs to be delved into deeply. Can you all talk about the red tape and bureaucracy that so often is in this the state prison? So when you have a family member or a loved one behind bars and you're trying to advocate for them, come to their defense, get medical services, treatment, and things of that nature, that many times it ends up being almost like a hamster wheel. You're running around in circles just trying to get some basic things for your loved ones. So can you talk about the history of that bureaucracy and red tape within the Florida state prison system? Brother Rashad, since I know that, sir, you may have to leave in a bit, we'll go ahead and start with you. And then Sister Marsha, if you have anything that you would like to add, and then Brother Zachariah, when it comes to the bureaucracy and red tape in the state prison system in Florida.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The red tape is real. It's very real. When an inmate has to go to get medical care while he's incarcerated in the Florida Department of Corrections, you have two ways of doing that. You can declare what they call a medical emergency, which is they recognize a medical emergency as a situation where an inmate is bleeding, has lost a limb, or has a life-threatening injury that requires immediate attention. They look for these physical things to be present and visibly seen before they can declare you to be medically in an emergency situation. If you don't have a medical emergency, you have to put in a request form to be seen by the medical department, which is designed to take about 24 hours to get to the medical department, but sometimes it takes days and days and weeks to get there, depending upon what the situation is. So the red tape, when you have a situation like Brother Cameron, you'll find collusion. You'll find unlawful collusion among certain staff members that would try to hide the situation while they doctor the documents that will be presented to other doctors to show what they have done. And so when you request the medical record of the inmate that is in a situation like this, they'll give you a collapsed version, a redacted version of it, They won't give you the version that was really generated by the facts of the situation. They'll send you a few documents that have been altered or changed to reflect something that didn't actually happen or something that they want you to think had happened. So red tape in this situation is that, in my situation specifically, I was called a road warrior. My family was trying to get help for me in my medical situation. And because they were trying to hide it, they would transfer me from prison to prison to prison. I would go to a prison for 1 or 2 days, and then my mother or my family would call that prison, and then they would transfer me under the cover of darkness to another prison. And it would take them days sometime to locate where I am. And then because I had just gotten to that prison, it would be a few days before I would be in the system invisible, and the staff there could say where I was specifically. And by the time they would find out, I would be on another bus going somewhere else. And they would keep moving me until, they would just so they just say, well, when he gets where he can call us, then we'll hear from him at that point. So you have two aspects here. You have the red tape where the inmate has to follow through. And then you have the illegal bureaucracy, the good old boy system, where they would try to cover their sins and crimes by moving inmates from prison to prison to prison, and then losing medical records and medical documents on purpose so that they can't be put forth in the court of law when you sue them for their wrongdoings.
Wow. Yes, sir. Sister Marsha, is there anything that you would like to add with regard to even your own ordeal, going through this bureaucracy within the system?
Yeah, so just to piggyback off of what Brother Rashad said, they did Cameron the same exact way. They didn't move him a lot because he wasn't there long enough to go through that before he experienced his illnesses. But same thing, anytime he would say that he was not feeling well, they would make him put the form in, put an emergency in, put the form in. And he did that so much till they stopped believing him. They started thinking that he just wanted to do the form because he wanted the medication or he wanted and all of this. So they stopped taking him seriously, even though they kept making him go back and put the form in. Or he'll put the form in and it'll be days and I'll have to call and say, well, he's already done the form. He went through that whole process of them saying he wrote something on the form and he really didn't write it. And I'm like, well, his memory is going. I mean, they're selling all of this to me. And because I wasn't as familiar with the system, so I would constantly have to remind Cameron, put in a form. And he'll say, Ma, I already put in a form. And I would think he was forgetting to put in the form when he was really putting in all of these forms and they weren't doing anything. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything, Brother Zachariah, you'd like to add with regard to red tape within Florida's state prison system?
Yes, ma'am. We are saying the same thing. That red tape is not transparent. It is what it is. I am personally a victim of that red tape. I had a brain biopsy. Those same lesions that Sister Marsha speaking about, I had that in prison. And only by the grace of Allah, he was with me with the out-of-body experience that I have shared on this show before. But the strength of this here, if you have outside support, we can prevail. If you don't have outside support, there's a graveyard across from that prison, what they call Boo Hill, where they put the inmates there, where the inmates is being sentenced to death by the lecture chair. But if you have the support that Cameron have with a justice, we can get him. Inshallah, and by the grace of God, these things exist, and they will, 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 they will give you all type of lies. We did this and we did that. Only by the grace of Allah, Allah had his mercy and some of the staff hearts to contact Sister Marsha to let her know what's going on. We do have good correction officers there because they have family members there has been mistreated as well. And Brother Rashad, I do recognize this, but the language that one may don't understand, they had you on that diesel fluid. Only thing you can smell the diesel fluid that coming from the bus going from prison to prison. That's the terminal lane of the prison. They
Yes,
had me
sir.
on that diesel fluid. You just on that diesel, that bus, going from institution to institution. It's real. And Cameron have an outside support system that will stand all the way. This is what we do. We came out of prison. We know what to do and we know how to do it. And we're not afraid. We're part of that 10,000 fearless that the Honorable Minister Farrakhan had spoke about. This
Yes,
is
sir.
part of us.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. We do have another question that I will place on the screen. Let's see here. This question from Affirm Soul states, Assalamu alaikum, family. What are next steps in, or what else can be done to direct more attention to the mistreatment of inmates in the prison industrial complex? So, Sister Marsha, for someone who maybe has a loved one and maybe was in the similar situation in terms of this was their first experience, they don't know, who to contact, what to do to advocate for their loved one. What can you share with them? And then from there, we'll go back to you, Brother Rashad, if there's anything that you would like to share. And again, Brother Zachariah.
Well, the only thing that I can say is pray for direction. Because I went to my Congress, I went to my state representatives, I've spoken to my mayor, and I prayed for direction. And I have a family member, my god sister is a part of the Nation of Islam, and we were burying my godmother, and you guys served at the funeral so beautifully. And God just told me to start telling my story. And I did. While we were eating, I just started talking about my son, Cameron. And God allowed the right person to hear it. And Sister Kalila immediately jumped on top of it. And now you have this. But I'll say, don't be afraid to tell your story. I am a very private person, so I don't like quote unquote, to tell my business, but don't be afraid to tell your story to anyone that will listen, because you never know who might be listening that might get you in front of a nation that is willing to support and help you.
Thank you, Brother Rashad.
Yes, ma'am. What can be done to bring more attention to the mistreatment of inmates in the Florida Department of Corrections and the prison system in general is, I believe that we need to have a community, a group of community people that are not a part of the Department of Corrections in the different states that would have unlimited access to the prisons themselves and the inmates to speak with them directly without the eyes and ears of the staff listening. What would happen is you would have the state representatives come into the prisons to inspect the prisons, and they would put on the dog and pony show for them. Before they get there, they would announce their arrival a few days ahead of time. And so the warden and the captains and lieutenants and the sergeants that work at the prisons, they would know that a state representative will be here on Wednesday. So they would spend a week ahead of time painting and cleaning up and getting the kitchen in order and getting the dormitories in order, so that when they come on the compound, they will see that, hey, the prison is running properly. But if you had these community groups of people that would come into the prison unexpectedly and be able to call out random inmates to speak with them privately and get the information about what's happening in the Department of Corrections and then have these things documented and reported and investigated by the Inspector General's office. This is how you get more attention to the staff abuse. Now, I must say that I don't want to demonize all the staff members in the Department of Corrections, because in my personal experience, when I was going through my physical heart issues in prison, two female staff members, one was a doctor and one was her nurse, that they became aware of my situation. And these two sisters, they called me into the office among themselves, and they prayed for me, and they laid hands on me as Christian women. This is what they knew how to do, and they did all that they could within their power outside of administrative rules and regulations, because they're not allowed to touch an inmate at all, period, and this is for a medical purpose and under the observation of security. So there were these women there who prayed for me, and they understood and they had empathy enough for me to do that, to put their jobs and feeding their families on the line, because they knew what was being done. They have seen it many, 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 many times. So I think that we need to do this, man. There's so much abuse going on. Staff would pay other inmates to beat up other inmates or even to kill other inmates. They would bring drugs in. They would bring alcohol in. Staff would come in, and then they would invite inmates to do all manner of evil and wickedness and pay them for it or to receive payment for it. And, you know, these are situations that are very real in the Florida Department of Corrections specifically. I speak about the Florida Department of Corrections because that is my experience. This is what I know. When you spend the amount of years that I have spent in a situation like that, you cannot just consider yourself an expert in this. You are an expert in it. And when it comes down to the Florida Department of Corrections, me, Rashad, Ishmael, Shabazz, I have absolutely seen it all with my own two eyes. And I can bear witness without a hesitation before God himself and speak confidently and clearly because I know my subject matter very well. My subject matter is embedded into my mind and my ears and my eyes. I've seen it and heard it with my own two eyes and ears. So when I stand on a platform like this and I tell you about what happens there, you can believe it. This is not an exaggeration. This is not something that I'm making up trying to embarrass someone. These are actual facts. And the secretary must be held accountable for his staff. The secretary, Ricky Dixon, this is his name. Ricky Dixon is the secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections, and he must be held accountable for everything that his staff is doing to inmates up under his charge.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Rashad. Brother Zachariah, anything you would like to add, sir?
Yes, ma'am. What can be done, basically, like Brother Rashad is bringing before the media. You go to your community like we doing with Sister Marsha. She is a citizen and resident of that community in Jacksonville. And then not only that, right here what Brother James read in the final call, what the Muslim want and believe, point number 5. We want freedom for all believers of Islam now held in federal prisons. We want freedom for all black men's and black women's. And up in number 2, he even read in what we want in point, regardless of class, creed, or color. And those people, we are the ones that will go to Congress or wherever we need to go,
right,
and raise our voice with a plan. I'm talking about a legitimate plan, they procedures and policy, and we come with the plan of God, and that is justice.
That's right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Brother
Yes,
Zachariah,
sir.
Brother Rashad.
yes, sir.
We can anticipate from our detractors and our enemies that there will be covert as well as overt acts attempting to cover this up and to bury it. Because the detriment, the potential detriment that would be experienced by the powers that be if this and when this gets out is formidable. There's no question about it. What I want to ask Brother Zachariah, are there any activities surrounding our call for justice for our dear brother Cameron that will be taking place in Jacksonville or elsewhere that you can direct us to, dates and times as such?
Yes, Brother James, I believe I sent you the plan of action. If I didn't, I will resend it. But to answer your question, all this here has been formatted and laid out since November. And our next step, we are waiting for a date, Brother James. I just didn't have the date. Um, we have been communicating closely with Sister Marsha, Brother Rashad. I even call him. I call him 3 and 4 times a day. Just tell him be on standby and ready. Once we get that date, I'm really waiting from student minister Nolan there in Jacksonville to hear from him and Brother Mike Foex to let me know so that our word is our bond when we say we're going to be by her side every step of the way to help me God. This what we're waiting for, Brother James. We're also waiting on a date that we will go uh, to Tallahassee, the capital, because that's where that's where it took 10 seconds to deny her of the medical compassion to release him, and we are going before the prison there where he's been held, and also to visit our nephew brother Cameron. Uh, Sister Marshall, she helping us get into the prison to visit him personally, but to give some dates. We don't have no accurate date. I know in Jacksonville they met today. Brother Nolan, student minister Nolan, met today in Jacksonville with some of the clergies, and I'm just waiting on that information. But I would keep you informed, closing the gap. So we just stay tuned, Brother James.
I appreciate that, Brother Zachariah. And I did attempt to print the plan of action. I don't know what's happening with my printer. I've been, as you have been stepping away, trying to correct that problem. But I know, Brother Rashad, that you have a list of actions that we anticipate taking. I wonder, Sister Sheila, if we can post that on the screen. We're going to attempt to post it. If you can do it, Brother Rashad, I'd appreciate it. I attempted to print it so that we could read out the step-by-step plan of action. But having failed that, I hope we can post it so that our viewers and listeners can see it.
It's transparent. It's not red tape.
Yes, sir.
I think they're attempting to do so.
Yes, sir. In the meantime, Brother James, I do have another question I would like to pose to Sister Marsha. Sister Marsha, you mentioned, of course, being the mama bear, and you have other sons. Can you talk about the impact of what Cameron is enduring on your other sons, your other family members? How have they been holding up? What have they been going through, seeing their brother go through what he's going through, and seeing their mom, seeing Ma Dukes go through what you're going through, but you continue to show your strength and resolve? How has it impacted your other children?
Ooh, so Cameron is my second oldest, and all of my boys are extremely close. Cameron is my second oldest, and it has been traumatic for not just my boys, but my entire family. So at Cameron's sentencing hearing, there was probably, give or take, around 60 people that showed up because he's just loved. Everyone loves him, but we are a very close family. So it has really impacted my boys, again, not just because there was Cameron, then there was my younger son. So when he was going through in ICU on life support, we were in the waiting room dealing with the doctor and him being castrated and all of that. So he didn't know any of that because he was on life support fighting for his life. And so the other day I was on another show and he was listening in and he had a chance to hear all of these things for the first time. And it was very difficult for him to hear that. And we kept a lot of it because we wanted him to focus on trying to get well. But Cameron at this time does not know that his little brother has been shot 10 times.
Wow.
We have not shared that with him. So he is wondering, everyone else has been out there to visit him except his little brother. And so we have, we've tried to, just come up with whatever we could come up with to make, he's busy, he wasn't feeling well. So he does not know. My son is about to go through a very major surgery on Wednesday to close his stomach up. And that is the only thing that Cameron knows is, he's about to have surgery. He's having some stomach pains. But we have tried to minimize it as much as we can because on top of everything that he's fighting and dealing with, he is a big brother and he loves his little brother and his big brother. But I don't want to pile that on him. And they only give me 1 hour to visit my son. And I have to go through the ward and he has to approve my visits. And I only get 1 hour. So I have to travel just to spend 1 hour with him. And I don't want to have to leave him after telling him that his brother has been through something that traumatic. I did explain to Cameron that because he watches a lot of the news, and I did explain to Cameron about this process. So if you see yourself on the news, this is what, this is why. And so, but he doesn't remember a lot. And he will ask the same question over and over again. Where's Jalen? Where's Jalen? Where's Jalen? So it has impacted my entire family. They have been on this journey with me. Typically, if I'm calling the prison or the jail, my sister is a nurse practitioner. She has her doctorate, and she's usually on the phone with me because a lot of the language that they speak, medical terminology, I don't know. And so she's able to ask them questions and have you tried this? Have you done this? And then she can explain to me, what it means once we get off the phone. So it's been a journey for my entire family.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Marsha. And with that, Brother Rashad. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
I may have was going through my little technical problems here. Sister Marsha, did you share why were your son shot 10 times? I may have missed that.
No, I didn't share that. So my son was a football coach, and there was a drive-by shooting. And so my son jumped in front of the children so that they wouldn't get shot. And he took 10 bullets so that they wouldn't get shot.
That part. Yes, ma'am.
One of the 10,000 fearless, Brother Zachariah, that you were talking about, and you, Brother Rashad.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sister Marsha, don't hold back. Let the world know what have happened, and you still standing by the grace of God. Please let them know. And
Yes,
especially
sir.
how they treated you in that courtroom.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother James, was there anything that you wanted to ask?
I'm actually in communication with Sister Sheila. I sent her the list of plans of action, and hopefully she'll be able to post it. Pardon my seeming preoccupied. I was just trying to make sure that that was going to happen because I didn't know what was happening with my printer. But we'd like to post those actions so that our viewing and listening audience could see how they could get involved and what we could do. We expect what we expect from the enemy. And to
Yes.
be quite frank, it's not up to what they do. It is up to what we do. And it's far spent the time that we're going to look for justice from those who have no justice in them.
Right.
But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, even the devil could do good under the gun. So we have to put our enemies under the gun. And that, of course, is not talking about a physical, literal gun, but it's talking about the pressure being brought there by public dissent, if you will.
Yes, sir.
And unity among us.
Praise is due to Allah. Yes, sir. Brother Rashad and then Brother Zachariah, again, when it comes to, those of our people who are behind bars, one of the things, if I'm remembering correctly, and you all correct me if I'm incorrect, but at the 1995 Million Man March, that historic gathering, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, one of the things that he called in terms of a point of action is to adopt an inmate, a brother or a sister who is behind bars, to, write them, communicate with them. Can you share, Brother Zachariah, the importance of that? And if someone is interested in doing something like that, but maybe they don't know someone personally who is behind bars, what would you give them in terms of advice on how to go about that process of adopting an inmate? Is it, do they need to connect with, an official in the prison? Do they go through maybe an advocacy group in the community, or a church or a mosque who maybe has a chaplain that's on the inside? What steps could they take to move out on that?
That's very, very beautiful, because you was right in my head. Thoughts travel at 24 billion miles per second. And I want to say that various quote what the minister gave us in 1995. If one do have a person of interest, sincerely to help, they have a family. And what they would go off of, now technology have advanced, only thing they would need to do, get that person name and registration number, their DC number, and they can go on their tablet and request to be a pen pal to them. Me and Brother Rashad, we have created so much data. Now watch this here. I am limited because I'm the one that going inside, and we shouldn't have no personal communication. So we do have, I don't like to say we do have a staff system that does support that. Only thing we need, that individual name and DC number, and we'll contact them. And we had created so much data, they erased all the data of Brother Rashad's system.
That's right.
And he still could not get in to this day. So pretty much that's what they need, Sister Stoller. Get that person name and their registration number and their request. A pen pal. And we have been so successful. And by Brother Rashad, brother, I got this. I cannot really communicate with these people, because then they'll terminate me from coming in. Mm-hmm. And Sister Stoller, just only by the grace of Allah, we have sent money. It's not about money, but Hager brothers don't have an outside support that Brother Rashad know from being in there. We have sent money. We have bought shoes. I have even went inside, eaten feasts with them inside.
Citing a broadcast. Sorry about that.
inside with them. We're not trying to convert no one. We just present the information that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan have instructed to give them. We can present that to them. But I do remember the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying some of his greatest help and his best followers is still in prison and also out in the street. So that's one of the avenues we can do that, Sister Stalin.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Zachariah. Brother Rashad, is there anything you would like to add with regard to that in terms of if someone wishes to, adopt an inmate or, volunteer, I don't know if there's opportunities maybe among maybe some of the youth prisons, but if someone wants to get involved in prison advocacy work, what would you advise them to do?
I would advise them to contact the Nation of Islam Prison Reform Ministry. We are an instrument within the Nation of Islam that would give them the opportunity to sign up as a volunteer. We work very closely with Chaplain Johnny Frambo, who is the senior chaplain over all of the prison chaplains in the Florida Department of Corrections. We have his ear, we email him, we speak to him on the phone, and they're always seeking Muslim volunteers. He has told me personally that he is looking for Muslim men and women to actually work in the prison in the capacity of a chaplain, to be compensated to come into the prison system and to work with the inmates. We've had one brother who was a Muslim over one prison for years down in DeSoto Correctional Institution. So, the opportunity is there. But in order to contact an inmate in the Florida Department of Corrections, they have centralized a mail office for all the inmates. There used to be a time where you would have to get the inmate's name and DC number and then the address of the prison that they were at and then write them at that prison. Now they have one address that you mail to contact any inmate in Tampa. All you need is the inmate's name and his Department of Corrections number and that Tampa address, and then you will send the letters to that Tampa address. They will scan the letter, and then they will upload your letter to the inmate's tablets. All the inmates in the Florida Department of Corrections have a tablet now. They give them free tablets where they can have access to religious videos, music. They can purchase songs and other media content on the tablet. And you can send emails to them on the tablet as well. Like Brother Zachariah told you earlier, this is the second time this has happened to me. I'm in contact with hundreds of inmates through the email system in the Florida Department of Corrections. My email content to them is strictly from two sources. From the 7th Region Prison Reform Minister of the Nation of Islam in the capacity of a secretary/paralegal, I would write to these inmates about Islamic information. And also my company, Shabazz Labs LLC, we have a Department of Education where we would write inmates and send them study material through that Department of Education. For the second time, they have taken every inmate that was in my account off of my email account so that I cannot contact them for no reason, no other reason. I have never written an inmate and said to riot, to run away from the prison, to fight an inmate or staff member. All of my emails from my company and as the 7th Region Prison Reform Ministry Secretary Paralegal has been to strengthen their faith and confidence and patience with the system and the process itself. So the enemy is aware of what the Nation of Islam is trying to do. It's like someone coming into a McDonald's and protesting beef. When the Nation of Islam comes into the prison system, we're protesting reprobate minds and criminal activities. So we're really messing with the bottom line by reforming the inmates and not giving them human flesh to capitalize off of. We're trying to take the human being out of the prison, make them productive, and put them back into society where they can realize their full human and divine potential. So this is something that I see in myself personally, where they would restrict me from coming into the prison and even writing the inmates in that way. But please adopt the inmate. Everybody, adopt the inmate, write to that person, And what this does is this gives you a direct line of information, a source of information directly to the prison compound itself, without going through the red tape and the bureaucracy of the administration.
Thank you for that, dear brother. I believe we're ready to post those listed plans of action, those steps. So if you can bear with us, Sister Sheila, thank you so much for bearing with us as there we are, right there.
Good.
And Brother Rashad, can you read them?
Yes, sir. This is a plan of action that we have put together for Sister Marsha and her family in dealing with her son Cameron's situation. Even though this is specific to her situation, it is general as well. Anyone can use this if you have another inmate in a similar situation. But the first thing that needs to be done is to gather the medical evidence. Gather all the medical evidence. Request complete medical records from both Duval County Jail and the Florida Department of Corrections regarding Cameron's treatment. Secure documentation of Cameron's current medical condition, including details about the brain lesions and the mental state. The gathering of the medical evidence is the evidence that is necessary to prove your claim. The medical records would memorialize his condition, the treatment given concerning the condition, the two different misdiagnoses that resulted in his castration, among many other things. The second thing that you should do concurrently is consult a specialized attorney. Remember, attorneys have specializations. You may have a criminal attorney, you may have a business attorney or a tax attorney. But we need to find an attorney with an expertise in medical malpractice and experience in dealing with cases in the correctional facilities. The reason why you need this certain specialized attorney is because this person knows how to navigate the so-called red tape and the collusion that is to be expected from the staff members concerning your claim. Discuss the case details with the attorney, including potential legal actions against those responsible for the misdiagnosis and the subsequent treatment. Understand this, dear family. The person who made these two original misdiagnoses are negligible. It's because of those misdiagnoses that we are at this young man's life right now medically. If they had confirmed through actual facts his legitimate or real condition, which is tuberculosis, it could have been caught and treated in his earliest time, and he may not even be in this situation right now. But because they were playing games with his life and being negligent, now we are at this point where he's been castrated, his brain has been damaged, and his mental state, his mental capacity has diminished to that of a 10-year-old. If you're not outraged by this, then you simply don't have a heart. The third thing, we look for independent medical evaluation. We know what the prison doctors are saying, but we want to bring our own medical professionals in to take a look at this young man physically and to look at his medical records and to go over them with a fine-tooth comb and see who said what and what the end result was. File a formal complaint. Once you file that formal complaint, then the wheels begin to turn in the process of law, the due process of law that requires you to do this and then do this and then do the next thing. There's always a pathway to an end result. And if you don't follow the pathway that's set out for you in the law, then they can always come back and say, because you didn't do this, then we can't take you here on this situation. So we have to be very careful about how we proceed or go forward with the situation. Engage with other advocacy groups. I think, Brother Zachariah, you mentioned dealing with the ACLU and other groups who are out there who have experience in dealing with these type of issues. We know we have many attorneys, prominent figures around the country. We have different pastors, worldwide figures who can stand with the situation and bring the claim to the public. But we have to engage with these different advocacy groups because they have platforms as well. And they have people and personnel who engage these platforms who have the financial capacity to travel to Tallahassee to stand with us, who have connections themselves to bring a bigger network, a wider network of advocacy groups, so that we can capture the criminals who did this to this young man and bring those people to justice. And lastly, the media and the public awareness. Now, dealing with the media is a tricky situation. And the best example that I have ever seen in my life in dealing with the media is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
He is a master at dealing with the media and their shenanigans. He was the first person I ever seen in my life that would do an interview and interview the interviewer to make sure that what you say that I said, I really said it. When you interview the interviewer, you have taken control of the interview yourself. So the media and public awareness campaign, once they get a wind of this, they're going to try to jump on the back of it and take control of it, and then they're going to try to spin it. We know how they do. They'll say, yes, this young man has been done wrong. He has been tragically injured by a government agency. However, we found out that he smoked a joint when he was 10 years old. You know, they'll bring up all this dirty stuff and try to divert the attention from the actual fact. So since I'm saying this because I want them to know who are listening that we are aware of your tricks. We are ahead of you in your games. That we have a real living God with us who will circle you in your games and destroy you for this young man and other similarly situated persons. So unfortunately, Brother James, Sister Starler, Brother Zachariah, and Marsha, they're telling me that my Wi-Fi is about to go down. But I would like to say once again, sister, we love you, we stand with you, and we are here for you.
And we thank you, brother. And this is an ongoing effort.
Yes,
Rest
sir.
assured, it certainly does not end here, and especially where Closing the Gap broadcast is concerned. We are your brothers and sisters, and we will take up the cause, which is our cause, because we all equally have suffered under this oppressive system, dear sister. So this is just the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Brother Rashad. And if you're going to leave because of things beyond your control, we understand, but perhaps we will get you back as we proceed in this cause for justice.
Thank you, dear sir. Assalamu alaikum to you all.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sir. Thank you, Brother Rashad.
In the remaining minutes, dear sister Marsha, we'd like to dedicate them to you so that any closing remarks you might have, you can share with us and our viewing and listening audience.
I'd just like to close again, thanking everyone for their support and dealing with this tragedy of what Cameron is going through. I am overwhelmed by the support that you guys have given and the platforms that I've been on. I just ask that you guys continue to pray for him. And if you can, once Brother Zachariah gets the dates, if you can come out and support us, there's strength in numbers. And so, you know, even if you want to give monetarily, there is a GoFundMe set up, Justice for Cameron, and his Cash App, Justice for Cameron also. However you can support. However you can do it, that's what we need. Again, my family has been phenomenal in the support that they've given, but we need a little help now.
Absolutely.
And like Brother Zachariah said, it is time to fight. And we've been here fighting for 6 years alone, and we appreciate the help. So anything that you guys can do, again, if just showing up. And showing them that we are a united front, that will go a long way in this cause.
All praises is due to Allah. Sister Marsha, what is the Cash App designation?
It is $ Justice for Cameron.
Very good. We see your contact information is also scrolling on the bottom of the screen. That's our dear sister to follow on IG. Marsha McIntryre-Lowe. That is on Instagram. And you have a Facebook page as well, correct?
Yes, and as well as TikTok, and all of them is my name, Marsha McIntryre-Lowe.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much, dear sister. Our
Thank
hearts
you.
and prayers are with you and your family, Brother Cameron in particular, but our actions will be with you as well. So we're looking forward to getting that information from our dear brother, student minister Zachariah, and we will, by God's grace, be there to support you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being a guest of Closing the Gap broadcast. We greet you, dear sister, with love, peace, and blessings. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Zachariah?
Oh, Jesus. Brother, I'm going to be straight up. I'm going to say this here. I'm not arrogant, but I'm used to this type of fight.
Yes, sir.
But I'm going to fight in the way of Allah. How the Minister Farrakhan has showed us many years how to fight this beast.
That's right.
And we're not alone. And my heart, man, it goes out to her. I call her all the time. I share some private stuff with her. And I have told her, she don't have to cry no more. We want to catch her tears. And when we open our hands, we will show her that justice has prevailed.
Yes, sir.
I speak to her. I'm very concerned. I have been there. I know this. And I will even share this here. They have even told my mother that my baby brother hung himself. So yes, I feel her pain because I'm connected to that. And if anyone on this here are listening, if they don't feel this pain, they're not connected to our people. You with us or against us. You're with us or against us. Because one day, it can be one of your very loved ones, and you'll have to come back to your people of God to help secure justice. Thank you, Brother James.
Thank you, Brother Minister Zachariah. And we certainly will be in touch with you as we await that information where we're going to stand and rally on behalf of our sister and our brother, Cameron McIntryre. Thank you. And I want to thank our viewing and listening audience. We've arrived at that time where our closing announcements are due. Thank you so much for tuning in to Closing the Gap broadcast. We want to thank you for your time and your attention. And for those of you who wish to make a concrete contribution or financial contribution to our effort, as you know, this platform is the people's platform. And we try to bring to you the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and of course, a platform for justice, freedom, and equality for our people. Thank you. Thank you. You can donate to Closing the Gap broadcast at $CTG broadcast. That's our Cash App designation. You can also donate at PayPal at jkingdom1@aol.com and Zelle at closingthegapbroadcast@gmail.com. We thank you for your continued support. And now let's go to our closing announcement, Sister Starla.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Student Minister James. Brothers and sisters, thank you once again for joining us this evening. If you would like to find out more about the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you can visit, well, first, we'll go, I guess, to the final call announcements, then we'll get to acceptance. Right. But if you visit finalcall.com, that's finalcall.com, you can see the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper, Black Educator Takes a Stand. You can take out a subscription to the newspaper, a digital subscription, or you can also, if you would like a physical hard copy of the paper mailed to you, you can do that as well. that very same website, finalcall.com. You see there the FOI, the Men of the Nation of Islam. When you see them in your community with the Final Call newspaper, make sure you get one from the brothers, but not just one, also grab one for a family member or a friend. On the very same website, if you click on store, it will take you to store.finalcall.com. There you can also get messages from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as well as books. And last but not least, Final Call Radio on that very same website. If you click the radio app, it will get you to Final Call Radio, where you can hear excerpts from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, from his messages, as well as musical selections from our beloved minister. Last but not least, if you are interested and would like to learn more about the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you can visit NOI.org. That is NOI.org. And if you hit the /join, there's a form, a digital form, and a representative from the Nation of Islam will contact you so you can begin the process of learning more about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And Brother James, did you want to talk about how people tomorrow can tune in, or is that you want me to do that to the webcast or the various?
You know, when Brother Chad's not here, that you do that.
Yes, sir. Brothers and sisters, if you are in the Tampa Bay area tomorrow, you can visit Mosque number 47 and hear a message delivered by Student Minister Chad Muhammad, and his theme tomorrow, the need for God during perilous times. If you are not in the Tampa area, you can visit NOI.org and you can view the national broadcast from Nation of Islam headquarters and hear from a student minister of the Nation of Islam, and that is at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time. That's 10 a.m. Central, and you can visit NOI.org for the national broadcast if there is not a Nation of Islam mosque or study group in your area. So with that, brothers and sisters, thank you very much once again for joining us this evening, and I will pass the mic back to Student Minister James Muhammad.
And I appreciate that. Once again, we want to thank you so much for tuning in, our dear family. Make sure you tune in next week, same time, same station. I see Sister Marsha is still with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add, my dear sister?
No, that's it. Just thank you guys again for everything you've done for me and Cameron.
We're going to close the show. Once again, I reiterate what my dear sister announced. If you're in the Bay Area, come by and hear our beloved student minister Chad Muhammad at 5508 North 50th Street, Suite 24, for this wonderful message that he will be delivering. Can I see that flyer one more time, sis? Sister Sheila, there it is. The need for God during perilous times. Don't you miss it. And when you come in the door, make sure you tell them that you're the personal guest of Brother James Muhammad. Thank you. May God bless you as I greet all of you in peace. Don't forget Savior's Day. Can't leave without talking about Savior's Day. We all are in joyful anticipation of seeing and hearing, inshallah, our dear leader, teacher, and guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. What does the Messiah think? I think the title is, What Does the Messiah and the Mahdi Think About What's Going On in the Middle East?
Have to say about the war in the Middle East. Yes, sir.
He has to say about the war in the Middle East. And you all know you have been chomping at the bit to hear from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan regarding that situation. Don't you miss it. You can go to NOI.org to get the information for our Savior's Day event. Happy Savior's Day to you all. Thank you. And may God bless you as I greet all of you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam,
Walaikum
sir.
salam, sir. Oh boy. Okay.